the real cost of setting goals, the real price that you have to pay for your goals and why most people aren't willing to pay it. That's the subject we're going to be talking about in today's Speak and Get What You Want podcast. It is great to be with you today. And I really want to focus on this as we are approaching, or we are in goal setting season. Now, obviously, we should always be thinking about goals. We should always have them and be driving towards them. But the reality is this: as we get to a time of year when we think to ourselves, we need to set goals and we really need to really refine our direction, we think about, oh, that would be nice, but then we don't always consider the price we have to pay to get there. And let me give you a quick example. I know a phenomenal, successful business leader and church leader by the name of Randy Rogers. And I was with him the other day, and he was with a group of young men, and he was talking to them about travel. And as he was sharing his experiences with travel, his success in business has afforded him the opportunity to travel at a certain level. And he was saying when he was in Dubai, he was at this incredible place at the airport, of all places, where he went in, and because of the ticket that he had purchased, he had access to this incredible facility. And he's like, there were just all of these restaurants, and I kid you not, he said there were 40 different types of water. And then he paused and he said, and all of this is for free. And all of it for free. And then I had to stop him and say, no, you paid a mighty price to purchase the ticket that you had that allowed you to get into that facility. And then he laughed because he, of course, knew it was true. But the reality is this: sometimes we think of our goals and getting there like Randy Rogers was talking about the water, that in all of these different types of water were for free. But in reality, there was a large price to be paid for that. And too often we, as we are setting goals, we often look at other people and what they've accomplished, and we want similar outcomes, but we aren't fully committed to paying the price to get there. We think it looks great. We would love to have access to those 40 different types of waters for free, but the reality is it's not free. You have to pay a price. And I'm going to talk about three specific ways that people aren't willing to pay their price. And the reason why I share these three specific ways is I want you to be thinking about, do you ever fall into those traps of one of these ways that is costing you your goals? It's costing you the outcomes that you really want. Okay. Number one, when people are setting goals, they get excited about them. You know, they stir those emotions are stirred. They're fired up. They're ready to go accomplish this. But then they underestimate the true cost of achieving that goal. Yeah, most people like the idea, the outcome, but they haven't fully counted the cost in advance. The time it's going to take, the discomfort it's going to require, and the consistency and sacrifice that it is going to require for you to get that goal. In fact, the delayed gratification. We live in a world where we get instant gratification. We want something, we can go online, we can purchase it. It is often there the next day, or depending on where you live, in a few hours. And so we become accustomed to having that instant gratification. And sometimes when we set that goal and we begin to pay that price and haven't had that gratification yet, it causes us to really not want to continue down that path. And it really stops and prevents us from achieving that goal. So number one is really too many underestimate the true cost of what that goal is going to require. So as we are creating goals, as we are getting clear on our destination, we need to be willing and committed to pay the price, even though we may not see that success immediately. But the vision of where we're going is strong enough that we will pay that price. A few weeks ago, I was in the airport. I shared a video where I was in the airport where I forgot deodorant. Of all things, and I was traveling to speak to a company, and I forgot the deodorant, went into the gift shop there at the airport, and it was $12 for some deodorant that I'd pay, at least half that at the store, but if I'd have gotten it or hadn't forgotten it, but I was willing to pay the price. And the people on the plane with me were also grateful I paid that price. But the reality is we have to be willing to pay that price and understand what that real price may be. It may be early mornings. It may be hard conversations. It may be rejection. It may be boredom. There's a price that we have to pay. I travel all over the world speaking to people, and I don't always love and oftentimes don't love getting in that airplane. I don't, but I love what I'm doing, and so it drives me, and we have to remember that we're willing to understand the true cost. And when things get difficult and when things get challenging, understanding that we're paying that price and be willing to pay it long after we set that goal. Okay? Number 2. This episode is brought to you by 10 Days to Create Clarity, a breakthrough course inside the Speak and Get What You Want Academy. If you've ever craved more meaning, more momentum, but not knowing where to start, well, you're not alone. The problem isn't motivation, it's clarity. These 10 days give you exactly that. Simple direction, real confidence, and clear next steps. You know exactly what you want, make decisions without second guessing, go from drifting to taking action, and align your life with what actually matters. And you'll feel a real shift fast. If you're tired of scrolling, stuck, or waiting for life to make sense, stop waiting. Join the Speak and Get What You Want Academy and start the 10 Days to Create Clarity course today. Go to speakandgetwhatyouwant.com. Too many prioritize comfort over commitment. So this is the second thing that really stops people from achieving their goals and not being willing to pay that price. They prioritize comfort over commitment. Now, people listening, you're listening to the show, you're going, no, that's not true with me. No way. I'm willing to be uncomfortable. But my question is, growth always requires leaving what's familiar. That's the challenge. You see, we will say we will be uncomfortable under our comfort. I know that sounds redundant, and difficult to fully process, but we say, I'm willing to be uncomfortable, but within reason. But the reality is when you become uncomfortable, and I mean really uncomfortable, then you're faced with a choice between discomfort and commitment. And so too many of us want to gravitate towards having that comfort. And so think about that in your mind as you're, creating your goals. Are you willing to be uncomfortable? And are you willing to be uncomfortable for perhaps a significant amount of time? And that's a challenge. And then number 3 is this. Too many want certainty before taking action. We want to know exactly what's going to happen before we take that leap of faith. People hesitate because they want guarantees. They want proof that this is going to work. But the reality is you have to knock on a lot of doors at times to finally get the one that's open. You have to perhaps take and receive a lot of no's before you start getting yeses. The reality is meaningful goals demand action. They demand us to take action and be confident, understanding that, yes, the outcome will come. Waiting to feel ready, waiting to feel like everything's going to be aligned and perfect before we take action, that just doesn't work. We have to avoid thinking to ourselves, okay, this outcome has to happen or I'm not going to continue down this path. You have to say to yourself, I am most definitely getting there. And if this road's not the road, I will find the right road that's going to get me there. So think about those three things real quickly that I just shared there that really prevent you from achieving your goals and paying the price. Okay. Number one, underestimating the true cost. People underestimate it all the time. Do not underestimate that true cost. And more importantly, be willing to pay the price. Be willing to pay the price. Number two, people prioritize comfort over commitment. They really do. They prioritize comfort over commitment. And then number three, people want certainty. People want certainty before they take action. They want to know for sure before they take that leap of faith. Now, the most important thing as we back up here, and I share these three things that cause people to not really get where they need to be. But let me emphasize one extremely important point, and that is this. I was at the airport on another occasion, and I was standing there, and I was making a quick video, and there was a Southwest Airlines attendant standing there, and she came over to me and she's like, "Oh, you know what's your channel? Where do you what do you do?" And we started chatting there for a moment, and she said, "You know what? I have a business that I'm really excited about that I want to start." And I said, "Okay, how's it going?" And she goes, "Well, it's going okay." "What do you mean?" I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "Well, I get excited, I get started, and then I kind of fades out there for a little bit, but then I get excited again and I start, moving, and then, it fades again, and it's just kind of this cycle I'm in." And I immediately said, "Do you know why you're in that cycle?" And she looked at me, kind of, "Why?" And I said, "Because you're not clear in the destination. You're not clear in where you're going with your business." And she stopped and she's like, "You're right." And I said, "Yeah, you see what it is you're playing basketball on a basketball court with no goals. And because you have no goals, you're out there, you go out and you dribble the basketball for a little bit, you get bored. And then you go out, a few weeks go by and then you start dribbling the basketball again. And again, you get bored. But you've got to establish the goals. And then once you've established the goals, once you've established the destination, then you have to have the determination to not fall into those traps I just outlined. It is critically important that you are willing to pay the price. And I gave you three things as to why people aren't willing to pay the price. But most important is most people, and I gave you those three things, but most people are not paying the price because they can't see clearly where they're going to be. If you know where you're going, if you are clear on the outcome that you're going to achieve, then you will do whatever it takes. So I gave you those three things, but now you say, "Chad, how do I overcome them?" That's how you overcome them. That's how you do it. By making sure you are clear in the destination. Because once you know where you're going, once you know where you're driving, once you know where you're going to end up, and you can clearly see it in your mind, and you can clearly see that destination, then you will be able to overcome those three things that are causing so many people to come up short. So as we approach this goal setting season, as we get ready for a new year, the only way you are not going to quit on your goals, the only way you are not going to have one of those three things that I just mentioned creep in and stop you from getting to where you need to be, is having a clearly defined destination. So my challenge to all of you listening is this. Over the next few weeks, be clear in your mind what your life is going to look like at the end of next year in 12 months. Be clear on what that looks like. How are you going to feel? What are you going to be doing? What is your life going to look like? Then once you get clear on that destination and that picture is in your mind, then you can set those goals that will get you there, and you won't cause those three things that I mentioned to you to cause you to stumble, to cause you to forget of where you want to be. You will be, number one, willing to pay the price, to pay the cost. You won't underestimate that true cost because you will do whatever it takes to get there. Number two, you will prioritize. You will prioritize the commitment. You won't fall into the trap of comfort over commitment. You will make sure that you are committed because you know where you're going. And so that commitment will drive you to get you there. And then number three, you'll take action. You'll take action. You will not let uncertainty prevent you from taking action. And when you do that, your year, next year, will be unlike any other year you've had. It will be like any other experience that you've had because you've done that. You've there's a phrase that Francis and I talk about frequently. It's called learned helplessness, where you have become, I set goals at the beginning of the year and I quit them the third week of the year, right? And we think regardless of what we do, the outcome is going to be the same, right? That's that learned helplessness, that it is a victim mentality where we say, oh, I don't know if I can do this. It always turns out I have the worst luck, all of the above. You have the worst luck because you are living opportunistically, not strategically. So as I wrap this up, I want you to remember, you get clear on the destination of next year. You get clear on what's going to happen next year. Then you set the goals to get you there. You don't fall into those three traps, and you avoid learned helplessness where life is happening to you, not for you. And you are going and getting exactly what you want. You're clear on that destination, and you speak that into existence. You speak it because you know it's going to happen. You have that level of confidence. I know that there is a price to pay. We all know there's a price to pay. And when you're clear on your destination, you will be willing to pay that price and watch what happens as next year is the greatest year you've ever had. Take care. Always great spending time with all of you, and go get clear so that you can overcome those things that are stopping you from getting to where you need to be. Take care. Bye now.